Hey there, welcome back to another review. So today on the bench we have something a little bit special. We have this here, little quadcopter. Another quadcopter, yes. So this here little quadcopter is called the Hubsan X4 Desire, or the proper sort of production name for it is H502E, I think this one is. H502C or E. One of those two. But yeah, it's the X4 Desire. If you're looking for it on Amazon, it's the X4 Desire. There's a few different types of these here. There's ones that have built-in FPV. There's ones that don't. This one here doesn't. Hence this little camera, which doesn't come with it if you buy it. By the way, this here is a little FPV camera, which connects to a little battery, which I stick on the top. This here is the little 720p on-board camera, which records flight footage. It's not gimbaled, obviously. But anyway, we're sort of jumping ahead. But get into the sort of bare bones. So this here's the little sort of craft. You can sort of see the size of it. So if I take it over to the bench from corner to corner, it's 18 centimeters wide by 18 centimeters long. So it's a square configuration here. So sort of an X configuration, sort of a little bit in the middle. Yeah, so this is the sort of way it comes. The motors are brush motors. This here is pretty much standard apart from this little camera and a little mod to the battery bay. But this here little quadcopter has altitude hold, it has GPS lock or GPS positioning, return to home function. Now I've flown this quite extensively, and at the minute, apart from sort of my big F550, DJI F550, which is a whole different kettle of fish, this here little craft flies absolutely brilliantly. The fun I've had, I fire this on with a set of my goggles, or I can fly this, and I've had this here out to over 350, I'm sure nearly 400 meters. No problem with the video, no problem with the signal on the transmitter. Absolutely brilliant. The motors are geared in a way that if the motors hit something, they just stop. It doesn't strip the gearing in them. Spare parts are readily available. Honestly, I can't say enough for this little quadcopter. There's so many little quadcopters about on the market for sort of the 60-70 pound range. This one here you can get now, I think, for about £70 from, I think it's Ghoul RC. You can also get it from Hubsan directly, but I think you can get it for sort of £70. Absolutely brilliant investment if you want to get into quadcopters, and you're a beginner. This here is brilliant. Or if you're intermediate and want to have a bit of fun, this is excellent. It holds up against the wind. Part 2 of the video will be the in-flight footage, so I don't want to talk too much about that. You'll see it in the video. But yes, absolutely brilliant. So we'll just go through some of the functions. It is a brush motors. The little props have A's and B's on them, which correspond to the little arms, so you can't put them on wrong. They just screw on. Sorry, I've actually upgraded the bearings in this. There's so many upgrades for this little thing, from motors to bearings. You can get replacement boards, replacement cameras, replacement frames. If you break anything in this here, you can get replacements really, really easy. So the little cameras at the front, brilliant quality little camera. You'll see some of the in-flight footage. It's not gimbaled, so obviously it's not gimbaled for a quad of this sort of size. So if it's fighting against any wind, it'll be pretty shaky because the little quad is having to adjust itself for the wind. So really, the best footage you'll get will be a nice calm day. The LED flight indicators and the orientation indicators on the bottom, they also act as a low battery warning. The little SD card for the front camera goes in there. The battery compartment's in the back. Now I've modified the battery compartment because one of the little issues I have with this quad is that it's quite hard to stuff the battery terminals in. So you just see what it takes, this little connector here. Here is one of the batteries. It's a little 2-cell battery, so a 7.4 volt 15C 610 milliamp hour battery. So this here goes in there. We'll get back to the battery in a minute. So I've just put these two little slots in the back so that whenever I close the door, the back door, these two little slots stick out, and then I can connect the battery from the back of the quad, and that's it, ready to bind and fly. So that's really the only modification I've done. Took 2 minutes. Yeah, and really good. There's actually a little connector, a micro USB connector in there if you want to update the firmware on the board, which, you know, I've sort of watched videos online. It's not a hard process. You can flash it, and I think it does make a difference, although this one came with the most up-to-date firmware on it. So there's the little quad. We'll leave it aside for a second. This here is the battery, as I said, and I've tested the battery. The battery charger included is this here, which is a little 3-pin connector which goes onto the balance lead. So this here little connector does plug it in and attempt to balance it. It will balance it to a certain extent. This here is just a little 5-volt charger. or sorry, 7.4 volt lithium battery. So it's a 5 volt DC, 0.8 amp output. I've tested it with one of these here little voltage and amp meters, and it does give out about 0.8, about 0.75, 0.8. Does take a bit longer. If you have quads, you can use something like this here. This is a little LiPo balance charger, and for this here, then you plug this terminal into the two connectors that go in there, and then this one here plugs into the 2-cell port, and this here will give you a much better balance charge. However, if you don't have one of them, the little battery charger provided will take a bit longer, but it does do the trick. Now I bought a spare battery for it, just because they're cheap as chips, to be honest. All the spare parts for it are really cheap. I think these batteries are about sort of £7-8, and they're actual Hubsan batteries. They're not sort of rebranded from a third party, so really cheap and really handy to have a couple of them. You get about 12 minutes out of the flight time. They're branded as being 610 milliamp hours. Now I tested them first of all with this here and got a slightly different reading, but with my more accurate balance charger, they were coming in at about between 590 to 600, so they're pretty close to the stated capacity, which is pretty awesome in terms of these little sort of batteries. So I was well impressed with the actual capacity in terms of what's stated versus what you get. So that's that. So onto this here. This is the transmitter, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite transmitters of any quads I have, even my big one. So this here is what I usually fly, which as you can see is sort of quite bulky. So this one here fits nicely in your hand. It's quite sort of computer joysticky. On the back here we can see it takes 4 AAA batteries. You could put rechargeable in if you want. And you can see the stick sits in the middle, so it's altitude hold. We have our trim buttons on it. We have the top button, which is your take pictures and your video mode, and then we have the headless mode, which is also the return to home function. So I don't have the manual handy. It does come with a good manual. I read all this first, but I've sort of forgotten half of it. One of the slightly strange things is the remote control turns on to the left, which is quite unusual. So when we switch it on, if I just bring this up a bit, if I can keep it in range. So what you'll see in the transmitter is a transmitter battery, which is this, an RX battery, which is none. So that'll tell you the battery capacity or what's left in your battery on your actual quadcopter, which is a really nice feature. We also then have our satellites. So this here tells us how many satellites we've acquired. Anything over 6, I believe, and it will hold GPS lock. I think it takes 6 or 7 possibly for GPS lock. Usually within a couple of minutes I've picked up sort of 10 or 11 of them, so it's no issues, and you'll see part 2 of that in the video. So by holding in the top button, we can see then it starts to look for satellites. It starts to, go into headless mode. Pushing in this right stick changes the rates. Now the rates on our standard rate, or if you push that in, it puts it on expert. So basically expert would be the equivalent of turning the rates up and allows the quad to tilt more, which makes it faster, makes it more sort of responsive. But yeah, so controller wise, it's very comfortable to hold. You can do an antenna mod in this here and put like a 5 dB antenna out the top, and it gives you more range. But to be honest, I haven't had a problem with the range in this here yet, so really like it. I like the finish on it as well. It feels solid. It feels sort of quite expensive. It doesn't feel like one of the wee sort of cheap ones. It is solid to hold in your hand, and the batteries last quite a long time, so I really like that. I can't say enough about this sort of quadcopter. I know I'm sort of yakking on about it, but I absolutely love it. For the price range, you will not beat this quadcopter in terms of performance and stability as well. The GPS works excellent. So to arm the motors, we hold these 2 sticks down and right, and that arms the motors. And then the same thing again to disarm them whenever we land. We hold them to the outer, and that disarms the motors. And that's about it. So stay tuned for part 2, and it'll be some flight footage and some camera footage from the actual quadcopter. So it was quite windy whenever we done the review, quite gusty, so the onboard video looks a wee bit sort of shaky in times, but with a camera that's not gimbaled, I mean, you can't really expect much else. So I hope you liked the review, and if you're looking for a little drone and sort of round about the £70 to £100 price point, this here is excellent. If you want to invest a little bit more, it is an absolutely brilliant alternative to use an FPV setup. This little camera was £20. You can get a set of goggles for about £60-70, and the little batteries for order pence. So that'll give you a stable platform to do FPV flying and get into the hobby if you want to sort of progress on to you know, sort of F550s or S800s, things like that. They're bigger quadcopters. This here is a brilliant entry-level quadcopter for not a lot of money. And as I said, spare parts are readily available. You can upgrade the motors, you can upgrade the bearings. The props are pretty well balanced out of the packet. I have a little prop balancer. They're about £3, cheapest chips, but really, to be honest, they're so light, these little props, that they don't really need much balancing at all. So overall, can't say enough about it. I love this quad, and I hope you liked the review, and thanks very much for watching. So just before we take off here, we're going to change the battery out. So we'll unplug the battery bay, unplug the battery, slide the battery out. We have a spare battery. Get the grass of it, so the battery just slides in, like so. Sorry. We'll just turn the battery around, slide in the balance connector, line these up with the slots, and plug him in. And then use this here and plug it in like so. Just make sure that you plug these little connectors in the correct way. And we can see now in the bottom, it's blinking. We still have our 9 satellites according to our transmitter. So we'll just test that out actually. And we'll see how we get on here if we can. So we need to set the compass again. So we just do the twirly whirly here, clockwise. Okay, and we'll set that down just. So now it says set compass 2, so we hold it this way and we turn it around in the, there we are, that's it set. So we just set it down in the grass and hope that it doesn't impede with any of the blades. We have 8 satellites, so we're good to go. We hold out to arm the motors. We're armed, you can see it armed. And that's us off the ground. So the wind is picking up here, so we'll just turn our little meter on again and test it. So it's gusting up to about sort of 5 or 6 and then dying away to 0, which isn't great sort of for quadcopter flying with gusts. So it will be moving about a bit, but that's it now. It's hovering, GPS lock, it's got 10 satellites, and the altitude hold. It's blowing about in the wind a little bit, so we'll take it up. We'll push in on this right stick to change the mode to export, if you can see that. But pretty much that's the hand off the stick, and that's the little quadcopter just sitting still in front of me, so it's pretty accurate, even this close to the ground. So the tree over there is 150 meters away. So we'll take it out towards the tree now that we've changed the battery, and we'll just take it out that way. So you can see it's quite nimble. Now I've had this here probably to about 300 meters or more with the FPV camera, but tonight we're flying line of sight. I don't have my glasses, or my goggles with me, sorry, so we're just sort of flying it. So that's me well past the tree now. And we'll start to bring it back, and we'll give it a bit of throttle to take it up in the air. And the great thing about quads that have GPS lock is that when you push up, it doesn't go with the wind and up, it just goes straight up. So if you take this craft straight up in the air with the wind, it will go straight up, it will not sort of drift in the wind. So we can see it up here, I hope you can see it in the camera, but so that's my hands off the stick now. You can see the clouds moving above it, and the little quadcopter is just sitting perfectly still there. We'll hold down this button to enable the video mode. It will be a little jumpy because the craft is having to fight against the wind. We'll bring it down to earth and back towards us, and we'll get some sort of lower footage. So it actually has an intelligent sort of descent mode on it, which means that if you hold the stick right down, it will come down slowly but not immediately down towards the ground. So it won't just drop like a stone if you take your hands off the if you take the throttle down to 0. So okay, so I'm sort of messing about a little bit here with it, It's in expert mode, as I said before, so it's quite sort of agile in the air. And there we are. So, as you can see, hands off the stick, and it's sitting there pretty well. Dropping a little bit of altitude, but we can live with that. So we'll just spin it around, and we'll sort of take off a little bit here towards the tree again. And try and get the footage sort of so I can't really tell how close I am to the tree from here. So what we'll do is we'll turn it around. And we'll do a little bit of a 360 there, so hope this is enough flight footage. And what we'll do is we'll bring it back over towards us. Okay, so we're pretty much above us there, you can sort of see it above us. And we'll start to bring it back down to us. And that's us dropped full throttle down, so that's how fast it comes down whenever the throttle has been pushed right the way to the bottom. And then if we stop, then the altitude hold kicks in again, and we sort of gain a little bit of altitude. So we'll bring it in then and we'll land. And yeah, another successful flight with a Hubsan Export Desire, aka H502E I think it is. And we'll just bring it down onto the ground and hold them out and disable the motors. Now before we turn off the transmitter, it's very, very important that we push the video button. There we are, and once that stops, that means if you turn it off halfway through, it'll corrupt the video. So brilliant quadcopter, so stable for the money, absolutely excellent, performs brilliantly. Spare parts, as I said in the first part, are readily available. And yeah, excellent little quad. By the way, that wee camera was about £20. So for the camera plus a set of half decent goggles, you can have this here, plus the little camera and goggles probably comes to about maybe £80 all in. You can have an FPV equipped quadcopter with GPS, altitude hold, that has a range of 300 plus meters easy. You can actually modify these and put a 5 dB antenna, possibly another video. But in the meantime, absolutely love this little quadcopter. Performs impeccably well, even in sort of breeze. For quadcopters this size to perform this well is an absolute feat of engineering. I love it. I would recommend this to anybody now that I've had a good blip about with it. And I hope you like the review, and thanks very much for watching.